The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today with this presentation. We're going to be covering the UKVI changes. My name is Peter Skillen and James McDonald. James,
Hello, everybody.
will be,
Oh yeah, go on. Sorry.
you cover the admissions. So James will be covering the admissions stuff from our UK central head office. So I'm going to start with the UKVI changes. So my name is Peter Skillen. I'm Intu's Immigration Compliance Manager. I've worked for Intu for about 3 years now, and before working for Intu, I was actually working at UEA for 10 years, and I've been the lead on Tier 4 compliance since it came in 2008. With Intu, we're very lucky and in a very fortunate position that we have a very good working relationship with the Home Office. We've been involved with a number of working groups. We have weekly meetings at the minute with all the changes that's been happening with UKVI, and Intu is seen as the gold standard when it comes to compliance with UKVI. Now, because of my role at Intu, I cover all of our Intu centres across the UK, and I'm asked to present at a number of events. Some that I've put up here, for example, like UKISA, Study UK, UK NARIC, Universities UK, and that's to cover the compliance and Tier 4 aspect. So I'm seen very much as an expert when it comes to Tier 4 in the UK. Now, as I mentioned, Intu has a unique partnership model, and as I said, the UKVI see this as gold standard. The reason for this is because of our relationship with our universities, in that our students are seen as university students, not just Intu students. So a student that's coming to study at Intu UEA is seen as a UEA student. A student that comes to study at Intu Newcastle is seen as a Newcastle University student. And again, we sponsor under the university sponsor licenses. We've got 19 partners across 3 continents, and my role, as I said, covers the UK. So we have 13 centres around the UK. 11 of these are with universities, and 2 of them are under our private licence. So our Intu Manchester operation and our Intu London operation are under a private sponsor licence. And here we are. We have the list of the sponsor licenses that we operate under. And as I said, the Intu London operation and Intu Manchester are very different from our university sponsor licenses. So this year in the UK, we had a general election. A lot of the changes that we've seen happen this year have been because of the general election. There was a lot of opinion polls, manifestos, party conferences leading up to the general election, and a lot of the changes that we've seen happen in the UK are down to the fact that they were trying to win voters, so trying to get people to vote for their parties, and the previous party that was in power was the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats. Now, the Conservatives have got back in power. They were in power before with the Liberal Democrats, but they've got in just by themselves now. In their manifesto, that they said that for this term, this 4-year term that they've now got in power, that these are some of the things that they're going to be doing, tackling the abuse in the system with bogus colleges, being more robust with institutions that have students overstaying in the UK, and looking at toughening up the English language requirements and clamping down on so-called satellite campuses. So these are institutions that are geographically based somewhere else in the UK, but have actually opened up a campus in London. They're going to be looking at those and clamping down on them. We have 2 operations like that. We have our Stirling University London campus, and we have our Newcastle London campus. We've just recently had a UKVI audit and visit at our Stirling operation in London, and I'm very pleased to say that we had a very successful audit and visit by them, and they had no problems and no concerns when it came to our operation in London. Now, the reason that the government have said that they're clamping down on satellite campuses is that there has been abuse happening where they've had satellite campuses. But I'm very pleased to say that Into has a very good record with UKVI, and we had a very, very good visit. Now, there has been abuse in the UK and abuse of the student visa system. I don't know if any of you have been able to see the Panorama programme that was aired, and that's the BBC Panorama programme. We had a television programme. It lasted about 30 minutes, and that showed the abuse that was happening in the UK. This was last February. It was last year, and this is when the whole TOEIC/TOEFL issue started. There was on the television programme they showed a TOEIC test happening in the UK, and on that test they showed a teacher at the front of the class giving answers to the students for their secure English language test for a TOEIC test, and that was televised, and obviously with that was quite damning, and that's how we had TOEIC removed from being a secure English language test. The issue that we had following from that is that the company that owns TOEIC also owns TOEFL, and that's why both of them were removed from being a secure English language test provider, because they were both owned by the same company. So last year in May, we had an Immigration Act passed. We had the bill leading up to it, and these are the changes that we're now seeing being rolled out operationally. So the actual Immigration Act and the bill were passed last year. They went to royal assent, so the Queen gave approval for them to happen, and now we're seeing them being introduced this year. So in that act, there was the NHS surcharge, there's the changes to the biometric resident permit, there was changes to the student visitor visa, highly trusted sponsor has also changed, and of course the changes to the secure English language test. So I'm going to cover all of these this morning, and then I will hand over to James to cover the admission side of the session. Now, the NHS surcharge is a charge of £150 per year, and a student has to make this at the same before making their visa application. So this has to be paid up front before they actually submit their visa application. I know there's been a lot of confusion about the amount. The amount is £150 per 6 months. So what you need to take on board is also the period of time that a student is given after their study period. So for example, if you're a university student and you're coming to study in the UK for a master's course that's over a year, so maybe a year and a month length, if you're studying at a university, you're also given 4 months at the end of your stay in the UK. That is also included in this charge. So it will be calculated if your master's is 1 year and 1 month, you'll then have to add on another 4 months. That will still be charged, so it will be a payment of £225. So the first 6 months there's no charge if you're applying from overseas. There is a charge then from 6 months to a year of £150. From 12 months to 18 months, that's then £225 because it's charged incrementally £75 for every 6 month period going forward. So 2 years is then £300. But as I said, you need to take into account the period of leave that you're given at the end of your visa as well. At the end of your period that you're allowed in the UK, it's based on the time that you're spending in the UK, not just your course time. For students that are actually in the UK, if they're extending their visa in the UK, the first 0 to 6 months is charged at £75. Then 6 months to 12 months, so a year, is charged at £150, and then incrementally, again, £75 for every 6 months. Currently, the payment is through a separate website. There is a web link to actually go in. It's a nhs.gov web link. We've included this web link on our CAS data checks, so students can actually go in and make their payment before they submit their CAS data check to us, because we're asking for students to send in their unique reference number. When you make your payment, you're issued a unique reference number with your when you make your payment. I'll show you an example of that on the next screen. This unique reference number is what you need to put on your Tier 4 application. Now, currently the two websites, your visa application website and this NHS surcharge website, the two websites are not communicating together. They're not linked. I do know that UKVI are working on the technology to make sure that these two sites do link up, but that's not going to happen until after the summer. So the students will actually need to take their number and put it onto their visa application themselves. The portal of making the NHS payment is a manual portal, so you put in the details yourself. That's what I mean by manual. It's not automatically populated with any details. You have to, as a user, put your own details in. So do please be careful that there's no user error when you're putting in your course start dates, your course end dates, because that could then give a completely different payment that you have to make. Now, if a student does make an incorrect payment, you can log back into the portal. You can make an additional payment. If a student does overpay, the UKVI have said that they will actually refund any monies that a student overpays back to them within 10 days. So when you make your payment through as a credit card payment, you'll be issued with a unique reference number. So this is the email transaction that you're sent through. It's a transaction confirmation, and it says that you've got a transaction reference of £75 here. So it's showing in pounds sterling your payment that you make. And then your immigration health number is that IHS number that I've got in this example here. IHS 123456789 PA01. That is the full number that's needed on the visa application. We're asking students to also send this number through to us, ideally this whole confirmation receipt through to us, so we can check that the payment is correct with regards to the study that they're coming to the UK. And also we're taking this immigration health surcharge number and we're putting that number on the ECAS, on the CAS that we send to UKVI. The reason we're doing this is because if there's a mistake with the number that's on the visa application, say for example a typo, students got numbers the wrong way around, something very simple like that, or they've missed a digit, if we put this number also on the ECAS, when the entry clearance officer is coming to make a decision and logs onto their system to make sure that the payment's been made, because we have it on their ECAS, they can cross-reference the number that's on the visa application, and if there's a digit missing on the visa application, they'll say, okay, they've missed a 1 off the end here, and we've got the number on the CAS, so they can enter it into their system and make sure that the student has actually been given the correct immigration health surcharge number and payment for their study in the UK. If a student hasn't made the correct payment, if a student can't be found on their system, the UKVI, the entry clearance officers, have said that they will spend time contacting students. They will give students 7 days to reply to them and either make corrections in doing additional payments or sending the correct number through to them. But if they can't get in touch with a student, if a student doesn't reply within the 7 days, that application will then be refused. So they will refuse the visa application, and with a refusal, that will count towards an institution's refusal rate. So the refusal rate that institutions operate under, that will count towards their license. I'm going to move on to the biometric immigration document changes now. The changes that are happening is that there won't be a vignette in the passport anymore covering the full duration of their course study. It will only be for 30 days to enter into the UK. When they are granted their visa, they'll be given a vignette in their passport which will be for 30 days, and they'll also be given a letter which says the post office that will be collecting their biometric resident permit, their BRP, from. This decision letter is a 2-page letter, and they do need to bring this letter with them when they travel to the UK. The biometric residence permit will be available to collect from the post office. I've been told as soon as the vignette is printed in the passports with the 30 days to travel to the UK, the BRP is actually printed and issued in the UK and sent to the post office where the student will be collecting it from. So actually the card will arrive at the post office before the student will actually be leaving and arriving in the UK. It's going to happen that quickly. I have already had some students arrive in the UK that have been to their local post office and collected their biometric resident permit. I went with a student at Glasgow Caledonian University just the other week. We walked down together, took about 5 minutes. He had to take his passport with him, took his letter. They asked him a couple of questions, and it was a very, very straightforward and simple process. So here's an example of the letter that the student will be issued. They'll be issued a 2-page letter, and on that first page you can see the box. The box lists the post office that they'll be able to collect their biometric resident permit card from. The picture to the left is just an example of the visa that you're issued in your passport now. That is a 30-day travel visa. And then down below is a copy of the biometric residence permit. This is a credit card sized document, but it is their visa, so students do need to remember that this is their visa. They need to keep this visa in a safe, secure place. If they lose this visa, we can get a replacement card sent out to them. We have our teams in all of our Into centres, our head of student services, our head of welfares, who can help students if they lose cards like this. We can get replacement ones. And in all of our centres, we've already been speaking to our local post offices about collecting these cards. Our post offices know that this is a new system, are very understanding. Some of them have offered to open up later and at weekends so that our students can go and collect them. We're going to organise trips together, so in small groups of 10, 15 students to go to the local post offices, have a look around the town. So part of the orientation in arriving in the UK, we'll be taking them on a quick tour of the local city, and at the same time popping into the post office, collecting their card. It's a very, very straight and simple process, so nothing for the students to worry about. If a student has accidentally requested for their card to be sent to a different post office by mistake, or it has been sent to a different post office by mistake, again, that's not a problem. We can have that sent and transferred to a local post office. One of the things that we've also been doing is for 2 of our bigger universities, so for Exeter and for UEA, we've been able to organise for the post offices to actually come onto campus and give these cards out to students actually on campus at UEA and for Exeter. Here's a list of our local post offices that we have and where the students will be collecting them from. As I said, we've already made contact with these post offices. We've already been speaking to them. They know that our students are arriving and will be looking to collect these when they arrive in the UK. The visa application form, when you actually submit the visa application form online, there is a new section now which says BRP collection, and it will actually list the post office that's been selected on the visa application. Now, I'm not sure if this has been rolled out yet in Russia, Ukraine with the new online system. I have seen it in China, where you have an option of 3 locations to select. You have your study location, which is based on your CAS, so your university, your residential location, so where you'll be living in the UK, and you have an other option to select, which is if a student wishes to send their card to a different location and they actually wish to collect their card from a different location if they're arriving into the UK and spending time in the UK somewhere else before going to their main place of study. James, are you still there?
I am indeed.
Yep. So I just wanted to check you were still there. For
Oh, yeah, I'm still here.
for students that are travelling to the UK, their BRP, their 30 days, is based on their CAS course start date. So the course start date that is on their CAS, they have 30 days from that date. Now, if a student is selecting that they on their visa application form that they're going to travel the same day as their course start date, that may cause a problem because the system is expecting them to travel before their course start date. So on their visa application form, I would advise your students and for you to put an earlier date of travel than the course start date. So if the course start date is the 5th of September, for example, I would advise that you put an earlier date, maybe the 1st of September, as the intended travel date, because that's before the course start date. I know that there has been some IT issues with UKVI where a student has put the same date as travel as the course start date. So I would advise that the students put an earlier date. The 30 days will be calculated from their course start date on their CAS, and that's when the 30-day period will go back from and cover that period of travel. So if they have a course start date of the 1st of September, the course intended travel date at the end of August, then the 30-day period will cover that. If a student isn't able to travel in the 30-day period, say something happens out of their control, flights are cancelled, something like that, UKVI have listed now a replacement vignette. So I'm just going to drop back to the page before. This vignette here at the top left-hand corner, which is just for 30 days, they have issued now a new form to submit an application to get one of these replaced in their passports. Of course, their visa is in the UK. It's their biometric residence card. That's already been issued, and it's in the UK waiting for them to collect it. So we do have that available for our students to go and get them replaced. The student visitor visa system has been rebranded. So we knew that previously, before, we had an SVV, a student visitor visa, and an extended student visitor visa, so an ESVV. The 6-month SVV was for any study, and the 11-month extended student visitor visa was for studying just English. These have now been rebranded or renamed, called a short-term study visa, and it's a short-term study visa for 6 months, exactly the same as before. You come to the UK and you can study any course, and a short-term study visa for 11 months, and again, that is just for studying on English. So exactly the same types of visa, but they've just been rebranded and called short-term study. Now, the 11-month short-term study visa currently does not attract an immigration health surcharge, but from the summer onwards, and the date of this is yet to be announced, there will be a charge towards the end of the summer for the NHS charge for the 11-month visa. So that will be £150 charge for the short-term study visa for 11 months, and that's purely just to be studying English. The HTS, so institutions in the UK, are now no longer called HTS institutions. This change happened in April, and every single institution in the UK now is just called a Tier 4 sponsor. So gone has the terminology of HTS. That is no longer referenced by UKVI in any guidance or the registers of sponsors. We're all just called a Tier 4 sponsor. And for the institutions that were applying for licenses or had issues with their license that were called an A-rated sponsor, they've now been changed to be called a probationary sponsor. Now, with HTS, or highly trusted sponsor, you did have before the refusal rate that counted towards your license, the non-enrollment of students that counted towards your license, and the students that failed to complete your course. This still exists, and it's called a basic compliance assessment. So any refusals that we have still count towards our basic compliance assessment. Any students that fail to enroll on the course after being issued with a visa is still covered by the basic compliance assessment, and any students that drop out of the course or fail to complete the course, again, is still covered in the basic compliance assessment. And then from April this year, we've had the changes to the Secure English Language Test. We've had a reduction globally from 15,000 test centres that were available this time last year. So if you think this time last year we had Pearson's tests, we had TOEIC, TOEFL tests, we had City and Guilds, we had IELTS, and these were covered by 15,000 test centres globally. This has been reduced down to 130 centres globally now. IELTS Consortium is the only provider for overseas, and in the UK we have Trinity College London, which has 10 centres, and IELTS has 10 centres in the UK, giving a total of 20 centres located in the UK to be doing testing. So that then leaves 110 locations, permanent locations overseas in 53 countries. And we have a number of temporary locations. These are called pop-up centres, and UKVI have listed 96 temporary locations which cover 87 countries. They've published the list of all of these locations online on the .gov website. They've listed the providers. So overseas, it's the IELTS Consortium, the test number, and the location of where that test centre is. So for a UKVI IELTS now, they can only be named at these test centres. And this is what the new test report form looks like. You can see under the candidate details here, there is now a new box which is a UKVI number. So previously an IELTS academic test only had the family name, the first name, and the candidate's ID. You've now got a fourth box in this, which is a UKVI number. This is what it looks like here, and this is what the UKVI will be using on their system to reference that this is a genuine UKVI test and that this has been taken and meets the requirements for a UK visa. For the Trinity College London examples, this is an example of the certificate that is available for Trinity College London. This is the Secure English Language Test for Trinity College London. So what does this mean for the Into courses? Well, there is a transitional period that's been allowed for any students that hold a Secure English Language Test that was approved before the 5th of April 2015. So if I hold right now IELTS academic test that I took in September last year, or a Pearson's test that I took in January, any of the approved Secure English Language Tests that were approved before the 5th of April, they can be used for a UK visa up until the 5th of November this year. So any students that are coming to study an Into program that's below degree level, so an Into Foundation, A levels at UEA or at Into Manchester, or the diploma at all of the Into centres, a student will either need a UKVI IELTS for their visa application or a Secure English Language Test under the transitional period. So as I said, that's anyone who holds a Secure English Language Test that was taken previously from one of the approved providers, and that was taken before the 5th of April 2015, and that can be submitted with their visa application right up until the 5th of November. For our students that are studying at degree level or above, so this is NQF 6 or above, so our bachelor's degrees, our Into graduate diplomas, or our master's degree, Where a student is studying at a private institution, so this is into London or into Manchester because it's a private license, they still need to have a UKVI IELTS or a secure English language test under the transitional period. So that is a secure English language test that was taken before the previous arrangements, so either a Pearson's, a City & Guilds, something like that, that was listed before and taken before the 5th of April, or a UKVI IELTS. That's for into London and for into Manchester. For students that are studying at degree level or above, and that are studying at a university, so one of our university joint ventures, the students can submit their English ability however the university wants to assess them. So a student could take an IELTS academic test right now, meet the entry requirements for the course, and that can be submitted with their visa application for one of our universities. A university has a power to assess English ability themselves, and this is what the UKVI is saying, that institutions, universities, should be using that power and assessing English, and the students do not need to submit a UKVI IELTS. Any English ability showing that the students are at B2 or above, so a Pearson's test taken today, IELTS academic test taken today, are all acceptable to meet the entry requirements for the visa and also the course. For students that are coming to study English for university study, or for students that are coming to study a pre-sessional course on its own, so this is just pre-sessional on its own, not where a single CAS or a combined CAS, integrated CAS is issued. For a student who's issued a single CAS to cover English or pre-sessional English on its own, a UKVI IELTS test must be taken, or one of the secure English language tests that were available for the transitional period. So any of the previously approved secure English language tests that were taken before the 5th of April. For a student who's coming to study a degree program and is taking a pre-sessional course, that is, and they want a single CAS to cover pre-sessional and a single CAS to cover pre-sessional and the degree, if the student's at B1, so their English ability is at B1, and they're coming to study a pre-sessional course that is less than 12 weeks, an institution should, within the rules, be allowed to issue a single CAS to cover the pre-sessional course and the degree program. The student that's at B1 must achieve B2 before the end of the pre-sessional course. So at the end of the pre-sessional course, they must be at B2, and then they can progress on to the degree program. For those students, they need to have a UKVI IELTS because they're at B1, or one of the transitional English language tests that were taken up before the 5th of April, so one of the approved ones before. For a student that's at B2, so has an English ability of B2 already, and wishes to have a single CAS to cover pre-sessional and degree, a single CAS can be issued as long as the main course is unconditional, and can have a single CAS to cover pre-sessional and the degree, and the university can make its own assessment of English for those students. So could take an IELTS academic test right now, could take a Pearson's test right now. If the student's at B2, then those students can have a single CAS to cover the pre-sessional course and their degree program. They have also just announced that because there was limited tests available by IELTS when they introduced the new system on the 6th of April, and that the testing didn't actually go live until the 23rd of April, that anyone who took an IELTS test, so an IELTS academic test, between the 6th of April and the 23rd, they can submit this as evidence where it's required for the visa application. So any students that hold an IELTS academic test between the 6th of April and 23rd of April, this can be submitted with their visa application, and that's possible again up until the 5th of November, in line with the transitional arrangements that were already published with the previously taken secure English language tests. We've been issuing clear guidance out. We've just recently circulated around the guidance of the UKVI IELTS exams. There will be more guidance to come out for the NHS surcharges, and I'm just currently working on new guidance as well for the biometric residence permit. So this will all be circulated very shortly, hopefully by the end of this week. We're just getting it signed off by UKVI. We're meeting with them actually on Friday. I have a meeting with UKVI on Friday. But the IELTS exams guide for students and agents, that was sent out in May. I've also created the visa guide, which you can see there, and that was again circulated, or should be circulated round for all of the visa changes. So it has examples of the IELTS certificates, the UKVI IELTS, the Trinity College London, and again the biometric resident permit information. All of that is in the visa guide. So we have a very high success rate with our student visa applications. We have a 98% success rate with CASs that we issue for students that then go on and make a visa application in the UK. But we want to make sure that every student that we issue a CAS to is successful, because refusals do still count against your license. And I don't know if you know, but New Buckinghamshire University lost its HTS license earlier this year. As I said, HTS is now gone, but the way that they calculate the refusal rates is still there. Now, New Bucks lost their license because they had a refusal rate of 21.61%. Well, last year the government announced that they've cut the refusal rate from 20% down to 10% now. So they are really looking at students that have refusal rates. So we've actually introduced in our Brighton team a visa vetting team. This visa vetting team will be checking bank statements from countries where we've seen a high percentage of refusals based on funds. We're also asking students to send in their TB certificates. From students that are coming from countries that require a TB certificate, on our CAS data checks now, we're asking students to either send in their certificates if they have them already, or just put a date when they're going to take their TB test on our CAS data check. The reason for this is because we want to make students aware that they have to take a TB certificate. Last year, I saw a handful of refusals based on the fact that students hadn't submitted their TB certificate. So this is why we've included that on our CAS data checks. As I said, the NHS surcharge number, we're asking for that on our CAS data checks to be sent back to us. We're putting it on the e-CASs. As I said earlier, if an NHS number is incorrect, if the payment's incorrect, that will lead to a refusal. And again, with the correct secure English language test, where a student is submitting an incorrect English language test, or does not submit the UKVI one that they need to submit a UKVI test, that will lead to a refusal. The entry clearance caseworkers, they will be refusing visa applications where you haven't used the correct secure English language test. So what I do is I do keep an eye on our refusal rates, our non-enrollment rates, and our course completion rates. I've put an example here for our Into Manchester and our Into London centres. As you can see, from 2012 through to 2014, it started to increase a little bit now. This is one of the main reasons why we've brought in our visa vetting team to ensure that our refusal rate does drop. As I said, we've got a 98% success rate across the UK. So some of our other centres have a very low refusal rate, but we do look at each one individually. The main reasons for visa rejections and visa refusals I've listed here. Credibility reasons. We do see a number of students that are interviewed, be it via Skype or face-to-face interviews, and they're asked questions, and fail to answer those questions suitably to prove that they're a genuine student. TB screening, so as I've said, we've covered the TB screening. Well, the reason that we're asking for the TB date is I do know that a lot of your students do have to travel to go to a TB clinic, and usually they book their TB testing the same time that they book their visa application appointment. So all we want is just for them to put a date in of when they're looking to take their TB test, so at least they know it's something that they've got to do, that they've got it in their mind, that you know they have there's something that they need to do as part of their visa. Previous UK study, so below degree level study, so NQF 3, 4 and 5, so below degree level, there is a 3-year cap and a 5-year cap for degree level or above. Now, if you have any students that, for example, have lost their CAS or their details of where they've studied in the UK before, or you have students who've now got a new passport and don't have the visas in their new passport, it was in their old passport and they don't have it anymore, we have for each of our Into centres a named premium account manager at UKVI. This is someone who we can telephone, we can email up and ask them details about students who are applying to come to the UK. So if you have a student who has studied in the UK before and doesn't have their CAS statements anymore, doesn't have their previous visa, we can actually go to UKVI and find out what they've studied before, what level they've studied, how long they're in the UK for, so that we can make sure that the CAS that we issue will be successful and won't be refused because of maybe the cap, because they've reached the cap of studying in the UK. Again, that links into the academic progression. Students can study at the same level. Students can drop from a higher level to a lower level, but this needs to be explained on the CAS why this is happening. So again, if you've got a student who studied in the UK before, now wants to come study an Into program, but they don't know what their previous level was that they studied before, we can find this information out from UKVI, and we can then put that on our CAS and say, we know that they were in the UK before, we know that they were studying at this level, and our CAS that we're issuing is showing academic progression, and this is the reason why. Previous refusals, where students had a previous refusal and has lost the paperwork, wasn't issued the paperwork. Again, with these contacts that we have at each Into centre, we can get UKVI to actually send over previous refusals to us, so we can actually see those refusal documents that have been issued and see what the reason was. I've also seen a student who was given a refusal to come to the UK because they'd overstayed their visa in another country. Now you've got to think about this, that students are submitting their passports with their visa applications to the UK, and if a student's been travelling or been to another country and has overstayed, it will be in their passport because they will have a visa in there for going to another country, and they should then have the exit stamps out of that country. And this is why this student was refused, because their exit stamp was way after their visa had expired, and they hadn't explained why that was. Now I think if the student had explained on their visa application that they had overstayed because of a medical reason or something like that, then their visa to the UK would have been granted, but they didn't put any reason down why that was the case. So UKVI student refusals, so Tier 4 refusals, visa refusals, they are kept on file by UKVI and are referenced to when students are making a new visa application. And then we do see a lot of rejections based on funds for the 28-day period, where money has to be kept in a bank account, cannot drop below the 28-day period, has to be kept in that account by the student's name or the student's parents or legal guardian. If it's a student's parents' account, they need to submit the details of the relationship, so the birth certificate, and also in addition to that, a letter to say that the student can use the funds that are in the parents' bank account to support them while they're studying in the UK. Sometimes we see refusals because parents have drawn money out during the 28 days and it's taken them below. That 28-day period has to be consecutive 28 days. The money cannot drop below the amount that they need to prove. For the credibility interviews, we have done some preparation videos. They're on our Into TV channel on YouTube. We've got a video of a student who's prepared for a credibility interview. These are Into staff that we've done these videos, but it's based on what UKVI are doing. So we have a student who has prepared for a credibility interview, knows that they're going to study in the UK, and answers the questions very, very well. And then we have an example of a student who has not prepared for studying in the UK, doesn't really know where they're going to study, and you can see by the answers that this student gives that you could question their credibility of why they're going to the UK to study. So again, these are available online for you to go and watch, to share with your students, and show them that this is what they will be going through with the Skype interviews when they go to the visa application centres. We also conduct and offer mock interviews with Into staff based in Brighton. It's a free service for students. It's booked through regional office staff, and we give formal feedback to the students, and we test their interview skills and keep on record how the student has actually performed. Last year we had a 100% success rate for students who actually took a mock interview with an Into member of staff that we gave feedback to, who then went on and submitted a Tier 4 visa application for students to come and study in the UK. So we had 100% success on this for students who maybe were a little bit nervous, just wanted to practice, run through exactly what it is that the test could involve, because this could be the first time that your students have actually been questioned in this way by someone from the UK. And as I said, it's a free service for students to practice, and we give formal feedback on how they answered the questions and how they presented themselves when they were being interviewed. One of the other things that Into have just introduced is Into Test of English. This is in association with Cambridge English Language Assessment, and we're looking to do some in-country testing. This test is broken down to the 4 components of listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So it can be used for assessment for universities studying at degree level or above at universities, because this is testing students' ability, and we can show and prove that students are at B2 with our in-country English language testing. This has been a test that we've built and developed with Cambridge English Language. They're part of the IELTS consortium group, and if you have any students that you'd like to have this testing, then do speak to your regional teams about this as well. Because of all of the issues that we've had with the Secure English Language Test this year, all of the changes, Intu's also created this new email address, which is celt.help@Into. This can be sent out to agents, to students who are still not sure if they need to take a UKVI test. If you're unable to book a test in time before your course start date, or if you not sure if you meet the entry requirements of your course, or if you've got any other questions, you can email this help. We've been responding to emails within a day to this help desk. We are having weekly sessions with IELTS, and we're sending them information with what we're seeing globally. We are testing their system on a weekly basis to make sure that there are tests available. So if you have anything that you're experiencing overseas, then do please email Into so that we can help you, because we are speaking with directors at IELTS to try and resolve any issues that we're seeing overseas. We're being told that they have capacity for taking tests, that tests are available for students, and that there are no issues overseas. So if you're experiencing any issues overseas, then please do tell us about them, because we need to know to be able to feed this back to IELTS directly. Now, I'm going to hand over now to James, who's going to cover the admission side of things.
Okay. Okay, hello. Yeah, so I'm just setting this up here so this should be working. So my name is James McDonald, and thank you very much, Peter. I thought that was very informative. I'll just go back a bit there. So my name is James McDonald, and I am the Senior Admissions Advisor for Team ECA, which is Europe and Central Asia. I'm based in Central Admissions in Brighton. So what I'd like to run through with all of you today is the admissions application process. Some of you may already know a lot of the things I'm going through. Apologies for that, but maybe there'll be something you haven't seen before, and it will be informative regardless. I'm going to be focusing mainly on academic applications, as that's my area of expertise, so Tier 4 stuff really. But yeah, so I guess I'll crack on. Is that all okay, Peter? Am I okay to continue?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so there's a student there holding a book. So the application process can really be broken down into 3 stages. The first is the application pack, which is where you guys, or the agents or a student, would send in their application form and all the supporting documents. It can then go to the offer itself, so that's an offer after a decision has been made. If it's a positive one, we'll give them a conditional or unconditional offer. If the student isn't eligible for an offer at their proposed pathway, we can maybe suggest something else. We prefer not to just reject students altogether. We do prefer to try and offer them an alternative if we can. And the third stage is confirmation and CAS statements. So that's where the students finally agree, yes, I want to do this course. We book them on the course, book their accommodation, and that can go all the way through to the CAS statement if that's if they do need a visa, which in most cases they do. So I'm going to run through each stage individually. So we'll start off with the application pack. So here's a handy little table. I'm sure all the presentations will be sent out to you guys after this, but this just shows all the things that we need in order to assess a student's application. So we need a completed application form in pretty much all cases. We need passport copies, a CELT if possible, information on gap in studies, all that kind of thing. So the application form itself, a little bit on that. So this is just a screenshot of one of our Sterling application forms. The things that we most definitely need at the beginning are a student's home address, the student's own telephone number, and the student's email address. We do receive a lot of application forms with those details missing. We do need them in order to issue an offer. So whilst the supporting documentation we receive may indicate the student is eligible for an offer, we aren't able to issue the offer until we have student's address, telephone number, and the email. We do require next of kin details. We don't need that in order to issue an offer, but we will need it in order to confirm their place. But it's just generally best if we can get that at the beginning. And also we need their proposed program of study. So that will include the pathway program, so whether it's a foundation, a diploma, or a graduate diploma, but also their proposed degree, the proposed progression degree. We have a number of applications, but that maybe hasn't been filled in, or the students they're not quite sure what they would want to do yet. We do need it at the application stage if possible, please. So this is the second page of the application form. Very, very important. We need to know if a student has studied in the UK before. It can seriously impact our assessment. As Peter was saying, there's a myriad of visa issues that can crop up if a student hasn't declared to us that they have prior UK study. We need to know if a student wants accommodation. If a student is under 18, we are bound by duty of care to provide them with accommodation and also an airport transfer. And then finally, just at the bottom there in section 9, we need the student to tick all those all those fancy little tick boxes just confirming that they agree to the cancellation policy and the terms and conditions, that kind of stuff, and we need them to sign it. And if they are under 18, we require the student's parents or guardians to sign it as well. So moving on, so just getting back to this slide again here, I just wanted to just add a couple of things. Firstly, previous UK visas. We need all copies of the student's previous visas. If the student doesn't have them, as Peter said, we can contact UKVI and work things out from there. But if the student does have those copies, we would really like them at the point that they initially apply. Also, a word on dual nationality. If a student has 2 passports, we don't necessarily need both, but if the student does have an EU passport or a UK passport, potentially they may be eligible for home or EU fees. It's better if we know about that as soon as possible, because it can affect the students' progression opportunities. As perhaps some of you may know, some of our partner universities don't allow progression to certain pathways if a student is a home fee or EU fee payer. Also, oh yes, just a note on CELTS. Yes, we do require the UK VI IELTS and now in order for the student to apply for a Tier 4 visa, but we can accept a TOEFL or a Pearson internally. So if a student has what would have been considered a CELT last year that meets the centre entry requirements, we can accept that if their UK VI IELTS is below the centre's requirements. So the application pack, once you've got all those wonderful documents together, a fully completed application form, if you could always please send it to ukadmissions.eca@into.uk.com, even if it's perhaps not related to us. If it is an English application, we can always route it to the correct team, but Team ECA, that's our main inbox. We aim to acknowledge receipt of any application we receive within 2 working days. The acknowledgement email will include the IN number, which there's an example there. The IN number is a unique identification number for each student. So every student on our database has one of these numbers. If you could please ensure that when you're emailing about a particular student, please include the IN number in the subject line of the email. That means that when it hits our system will automatically route it to that student's profile. It saves us a lot of time, saves some delay, so we can see straight away that your email relates to that student. In some instances, it has happened in the past where there's been a bit of mix-up, and a particular student has ended up with another student's ID number, or multiple students have been referenced in one email with only one ID number. It gets quite complicated on the system. What I would ask is if you could send one email per student, and always use the correct IN number, if that's okay. Okay, so the offer. So once we've made a positive decision, we'll issue an offer which will be conditional or unconditional. The student can still confirm their place on the course regardless of whether it's conditional or not. In order to confirm their place, we need the student to return the fully completed acceptance form, proof of a deposit that they've made, a homestay preference form if they have opted for homestay accommodation. If the student is under 18, we will require the first 4 of the 5 under 18 forms in order for us to continue. And if the student is under 18 but has selected or has alternative accommodation that we have approved, we need them to have completed the alternative accommodation form, which would have been accompanied the offer. A word on the deposit there. The deposit, the student can either give us their bank details or their credit card details as part of the acceptance form package. I'm sure some of you have seen it from the offer, or alternatively a payment receipt or a TT from that payment. Just a little word on the under 18 forms. We have a rather sullen looking young lady there, but if they're under 18, we do need parental consent for that one, and student consent, we need them to complete the medical form signed off by the parents and confirming if there's any medical issues that maybe they didn't declare on the application form originally. And the guardianship form, a word on the guardianship form, the student doesn't have to have a guardian. If they're under 18 and they're taking our accommodation, that we function as a guardian there. But if they do have a guardian, it would be at that point we would need the guardian's name and address. Okay. So once the student has confirmed the place, we will issue a confirmation pack. The confirmation pack will, if the student has an unconditional offer, will also include the CAS data check. If the offer is still conditional, you will receive the confirmation pack, a statement showing what the student has paid so far, but only once the offer is unconditional will we issue this document here. And the CAS data check is the final opportunity for the student to confirm that the data we have on our system is correct. That's because all these details included here, I have blanked out the name and the address for data privacy reasons, but all of this information is uploaded onto UKVI's system by us. So it's important that what we have is correct, because when the student does apply for their visa, these details really need to match as much as possible. So looking at the CAS data check, if you can see, there are tick boxes on the right hand side there. We just need the student to tick if they're happy with the spelling of their name, if they're happy with the way we formatted their address, but just all of those details that they concur. Those of you that have maybe worked with Into for some time will notice that the CAS data check has a couple of new, very exciting fields. The first is, as Peter was saying, the IHS number. We now, not only do we have the link to the website, but we do require the IHS number to be put in that box, please. We'd also like the IHS, the receipt of payment as well. Also there on the right, there is the TB test box. We just need the student to confirm if they have already sent us the TB certificate, in which case, if they have ticked that, please send it along with the CAS data check, or if not, just the date when they are intending to take it. And we just need them to sign and complete all that there. And then once the student has confirmed that they're happy with all the data, we will then proceed to generate a CAS. The CAS number will then be sent to you guys via this wonderful CAS statement here. This is the current look of the CAS statement, so you can see the student in particular was applying for Into Manchester. Do note that I think Peter mentioned this as well. First, we now have the visa vetting team. So before a CAS is issued, we will require, in some instances, in most instances, for a student to produce the TB certificate, or at least confirm that they've asked for it. And we would like to see copies of the bank statements the student will use for their visa application, confirming that they have enough maintenance fees in there as per UKVI's requirements. If this doesn't apply to all regions, if it does apply to your region and to your student, it will be, sorry, I have to step back there, but it will be mentioned on the CAS data check that we will require the bank statement. So it will be quite plain in the CAS data check sheet and the confirmation pack. So the CAS statement will come through. Notice that the IHS number, as Peter was saying, it's down there in the evidence used box. So the CAS is valid for 6 months. We can issue a CAS 6 months prior to the course start date in some cases. Most of our centres prefer it to be issued 3 months before the course start date, and that tends to be our policy really. So in June, we're now issuing CASs for the September start date. Also note that when we receive the CAS data check, we need at least 2 working days in order for a CAS number to be produced by us. So may be worthwhile bearing in mind that when booking visa appointments, because you might send in the CAS data check, it can take a little time for us to produce it. So if you send in the CAS data check and have booked a visa appointment for the next day, we might not be able to produce the CAS in time. Regarding changes to a CAS, so sometimes the student ticks all the CAS data check boxes. Yes, they say, we're happy with the data, please continue. And then they receive the CAS statement and realise that, oh no, my home address is actually wrong, or I now have a new passport and my name is a different spelling now, or something like that, or they've paid more money. We can update the CAS statement after we've issued it. A note on qualifications: we can update a qualification, but we cannot add a new one. And finally, once the CAS has been used, i.e. once the student has actually applied for their visa, unfortunately we can't make any changes to the data we've uploaded to SMS. The CAS profile is locked to us. Okay, so hopefully at that point the student will go off with all their supporting documents and apply for their visa, and then they'll want to come along and start studying. Under 18 students, we definitely require their arrival details, because in pretty much all cases we will have arranged an airport transfer. Two ways that we would love you to log the arrival details. The first is that email address at the top there, and the second one is a web address that opens up a little form on our website, and the student can complete all their details there, and that enables us to arrange the transfer easily. It takes about 2 working days to get a taxi arranged, so if you can give us plenty of time to get all that set up, that would be great. And even if the student is over 18, if you know, it can always help us if we know when a student is going to turn up, especially if they're not going to be there on the day that the course starts. And regarding accommodation, so when the student confirms their place, a room is reserved, or a place in the accommodation block is reserved, but a specific room isn't allocated until about roughly 4 weeks before the course start date. So, for instance, right now there are students who have confirmed their place for September, but we don't know what specific room they have within the block. The centres themselves will send out a confirmation to you. So, sort of in the middle of August, or the beginning in August, you'll be receiving the accommodation, the specific accommodation details. And there's a picture of a plane. I don't know why I added that. So that's, yeah, this has been quite basic. I imagine many of you have questions. I think there's a questions tab here I'll have a look at in a minute, but if you do have any questions, or you think of anything later on, please don't hesitate to send an email to ukadmissions.eca@into.uk.com. We'll aim to get back to you as soon as we can, yeah, that'd be, yeah, please send any queries to there. And in case you don't know us, just a big thank you to all of us from Team ECA. So I'm James McDonald, Senior Admissions Advisor. There's also Veronica Petrosova, who's my admissions advisor, and our relative new starter, who's been with us a couple of months now, Sophie Delorme, who's our admissions assistant. And that is that. So I hope it's been informative for you. I guess, Peter, are you there?
I am, James, yeah.
Okay, so that's me done. Shall I hand back over to you now? Or?
Yeah, that'd be fine, thank you.
Okay, so I'll do the thing. And thank you very much for listening.
So I'm just going to wrap up now. So thank you all for listening today. There have been a number of questions that have been submitted while this has been ongoing. What I'm going to do is actually take those questions that have been asked, put them together in a sort of Q&A, and then when we circulate round the guidance, so our BRP guidance, our guidance for the NHS charges, and the revised UK VI guidance that we're looking at. I'll also add in those questions that have been asked. There's been a number of questions, like for example, what is the transitional CELT? It's a transitional period, so the period of time that an old CELT can be used for. So that's a CELT that was taken before the 5th of April. So a student that holds a IELTS academic test or a Pearson's test that was taken last year, that is the transitional period of time that UKVI have allowed students to still use those old secure English language tests, and that's up until the 5th of November. So it's not a transitional CELT as such, it's a transitional period of time. Do students need to pass another IELTS test if they had one in November 2014 and the course starts in November 2015? No, they don't need to. If they have an IELTS test that meets the entry requirements of the course, then they can use that because it's part of the transitional period. So that is allowed, that's the transitional period. Even if the test was not taken at a now approved UKVI testing centre, they can still use the test. So if it's taken at an IELTS academic test centre that is now no longer approved, so one of the older ones, if it's taken last year, they can still use that secure English language test. There are a number of other questions, and again, I'll post those together with the questions, but thank you all very much for listening today, and I hope you found the information useful. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.